Hello.
Welcome to the Higher Ed Jobs, Careers, and Coffee Conversation. Hello, Eileen.
Hello, Andy.
I'm Andy Hibble, your host. I'm one of the co-founders and the Chief Operating Officer of Higher Ed Jobs. Before we begin today, a few quick notes. If you have a question for our guests, please use the Q&A option to type your question. Our Director of Editorial Strategy, Kelly Sherwin, will moderate the questions, and we'll reserve about the last 10 or 15 minutes for audience questions. Um, As the name suggests, this is careers in coffee, so there is coffee involved. Uh, Everybody who attends will be entered to a drawing for a free coffee card. Eileen, unfortunately, you're not included there. We'll reach out to the winner after the session, but I always like to do a check-in, and I'm really excited about this today. It was recently my birthday, and I love iced coffee, and my family gave me this quick iced coffee maker. So I'm drinking decaf iced coffee for the webinar today. Eileen, what do you have with you?
Well, nothing as stylish as that, Andy, but I do have a French roast and a French pat press. If you can see it, this is one of my grandmother's cups, which is the size that coffee cups used to be. And so I really appreciate using those for the afternoon size cup. So in my older age, so I'm mid 50s now, I'm finding that I've got to cut the caffeine off at a certain point in the afternoon, and the smaller cup size helps me do that. So, but your rig there is very, very impressive.
It is quite nice, I have to say. Um, if you'd like to share a comment with your peers, you'll actually have the ability to do so in the chat box. Definitely find out what other people are drinking as far as coffee goes. In addition to Kelly, other higher ed jobs team members are here to support the session and help ensure a smooth experience for everyone. So if you have something going on, put something in the chat and somebody is here to help you. And last but not least, that the session's being recorded and will be available soon on our YouTube channel. You've already had a chance to get to know Eileen a little bit more, but I'm delighted to welcome Eileen as today's guest. I admit that I'm slightly biased here. Eileen is a longtime friend of our podcast and was the first Careers in Coffee guest. So this is a repeat. Uh, I will tell you, this is not Saturday Night Live. So if you make it to five, there's not going to be a five timers club. Just want to be clear on that. We don't
Okay.
have a budget for Blazers. Um, but Ilene Crawford currently is an executive coach, higher education consultant, and a former provost with more than 30 years of experience in academia. She served as a faculty member, a Fulbright scholar twice, I believe,
Indeed.
associate vice president, and most recently is provost and vice president for academic affairs at the amazing Cornell College in Mount Vernon, Iowa. Currently, through Ilene Crawford Consulting, LLC, she works with higher education professionals on leadership development and career growth. Eileen, welcome back. I'm really excited to be able to have another chat with you here today.
Same. I am thrilled to be back on Careers and Coffee, Andy. So this is going to be a treat. And it looks like we've got an eager audience today. So
Yes,
shall we get right to it?
yeah, I'm going to get right to it. And the title of the session is, Am I Ready to Lead? A Faculty Member's Guide to Making the Move into Administration. Now, if you're sitting here and you're like, I'm not a faculty member, I can tell you from my previous conversations with Eileen, I think there's valuable information no matter where you sit here, but I do think there's some very unique parts of being a faculty member making this transition that I think Eileen can bring to light. But please don't tune out if you're not a faculty member because I think you're going to get a tremendous value from the conversation as well.
I hope so. Yes.
Most importantly, you've lived this yourself. You've been a faculty member, you've served many director level roles, AVP, provost. What was it that first pulled you toward administration? Was there a moment, or did it just kind of build over time and said, maybe I really should look at this?
Yeah. For me, it built over time, Andy. My academic discipline is rhetoric and composition studies, And that gave me early opportunities, both as a graduate student and as an early career faculty member, to lead undergraduate writing programs. So providing faculty development, running large-scale assessments, using those results to improve curriculum and student learning outcomes. Those were early, really, really formative career opportunities for me that helped me see that I could have an impact beyond my own students. So for me, those experiences made me more and more curious over time about the institution beyond my discipline, beyond my department, how the broader institution worked. But my real light bulb moment, I think, was the experience I had completing the HERS Leadership Institute. That was a 1 year institute experience when I was a mid-year career faculty member. I was fully promoted at that point, and really thinking about what was next for me. It was really there that I had the opportunity with my cohort and with the program, because these were people that came not just from academic affairs, but all across the institution. So I developed a working knowledge of other parts of the institution, student affairs, finance, athletics, enrollment management, and really began understanding how they work together and got interested in being part of that work. So it was really my path to decide that I was ready to make a full transition out of faculty roles and into leadership roles, into administrative roles.
Can we just spend a quick moment for folks who are not familiar with the HERS program, maybe offer a little bit more, and if they're interested in more information, where can they find out more information about something like that?
Absolutely. So Higher Education Resources Services, or HERS, HERS, is for women identified leaders in development. They run a number of institutes. Their signature program is the Leadership Institute. It's really a 1 year cohort-based experience that they have at a few places around the country, but easy to find, on their website. But there are other different stages of your career, different shorter form programs that they also run. I'll make a plug here too, just for ACE and for the ACE Women's Networks that operate in many states, not all states, but many states. So as another professional development resource, that has low barrier to entry for women in higher education, and just a great networking and professional development opportunity in those state-run organizations as well.
And really, I was not familiar before, kind of preparing for the careers in coffee, that HERS had such a variety of professionals going through that program, which I think, as we're going to get more into, is really a valuable part of the journey for
Absolutely.
for you, and I do think for others.
Yeah, and seeing a lot of their brand is really showing like all the very different pathways, into leadership, that are possible. So seeing other women, walk that path and come from very different places and circumstances and get the opportunity to work alongside them. Those are great experiences. So if there is any part of that you can replicate, in other opportunities that you have, that you can seek out, highly recommended.
Let's kind of stay with kind of that pull that you were feeling. Not everybody always feels that pull. Might spend a long time of your career waiting until you feel that pull, partly because it's really hard to know when the timing is right. And as a career progresses, a career is not in a silo. It's part of a more robust life, and lots of things are happening. And for a lot of things in life, the timing never seems quite about perfect for anything. I've frequently heard that from friends about having children. If I would have waited for exactly the right time, I may not have had children. Um, what are some of the real signals, though, that you're ready to pursue this more seriously and really examine whether or not it's right for you? Are there a few big milestones that you want people to be aware of that they should be looking out for?
Well, I would encourage people to think about a few things. First are just some of the essential characteristics. Are you curious about how an institution of higher education operates? Are you a systems thinker, who enjoys finding solutions, within design constraints? Do you enjoy working with other people, but are not a people pleaser? Or if you are, you've got good skills to manage that tendency. Are you a highly organized project manager? Great communication skills, very self-aware, very reflective, clear about what your own strengths and your own values are. This sounds like you. If you've got a number of those characteristics, when is the timing right? Now, I'll say tongue in cheek that I've talked to an awful lot of associate deans, chairs, even deans, who, got the call, so to speak. It wasn't something that they were actively seeking. But for many people, questions like these start to surface. They're starting to wonder, how to have a broader impact on an institution, something besides their own classroom. What are other ways that they can support the mission of the institution? Or they might be feeling like they've accomplished a lot of what they set out to do, both as a scholar and as a teacher. They're feeling very satisfied, on both of those counts, and are maybe starting to feel a little itchy about, what are some new challenges to pursue. I think is really helpful to people as they make this turn if they also think in terms of, do you have enough experience under your belt that you've been able to successfully collaborate and lead with or alongside other people that you don't have true authority over? And are you comfortable operating in a mode other than a consensus-driven decision-making culture? So those are just some other things, to think about. So if a lot of that sounds like you may be at a point, where you're ready to really be, seriously pursuing some new opportunities.
I I couldn't agree more. And I'd like to kind of respond to all of that, but just taking the beginning and the end, I love that you led with curiosity. I think if you look at an academic institution and any type of academic institution with curiosity, and you're a person who wants to understand it better, there's a lot of professional joy that can come from that.
Yeah.
These are neat places.
Yes.
Now, sometimes living in them and trying to operate them, they don't seem as neat. And I think there's an easy way to kind of dismiss it. But the centralized, decentralized nature of a university, meaning you have a centralized administration, but really you have the academic pursuits pursuing on their own with a lot of autonomy compared compared to what you might see in a for-profit or a nonprofit, traditional nonprofit structure. So I always think that curiosity part, if you're interested in that, that's going to be something that you're going to enjoy learning about. But more importantly, it's going to give you a better understanding of how to do more of a centralized job in administration better. And that comes to that last part. And you talked about you can't just build consensus, and you might not have authority over some of these people. And probably, even if you did have authority, just kind of offering an edict and telling people that this is the way it will be is not a great way to lead in most instances. Maybe in certain instances you have to make that call, but you need to have the team understanding why and why there can't be consensus here and it just needs to be that way. But those two things seem to go very much hand in hand. That if those things are appealing to you and you like problem solving in those ways, boy, you kind of really hit the nail on the head. And I would say the same about leading an administrative department. If you're going to be a VP of development or a VP of student affairs, you need to have all of those same skills as
Agreed.
if you were coming from the faculty side.
No, absolutely. Agreed.
Yeah. I think kind of taking the next step here, though, you've studied in the case of somebody who's a professor of many years, you've studied through 3 degrees, and now you are what you are. I am a specialist in this. I am somebody who has immersed my life into the knowledge of whatever the subject might be. And now you're saying, I'm going to put that part of me aside. And now I'm going to do something else that's related, but really isn't going to be relying on that knowledge I've been studying so long for. Um, I'm a lawyer by trade, and I still need to sometimes remind my mom why I didn't pursue becoming a lawyer. And is it part of what I do? Yeah, it's part of what I do, but I don't use it the same way. I would say you're still a scholar no matter what. They can't take that away from you. But if you're taking on those broader leadership responsibilities and a way to contribute to the institution differently, what does that adjustment look like from a self-image perspective? And what tends to surprise people the most about that transformation
Mm.
and metamorphosis,
Yeah.
if really what it's going to be?
Yeah. Well, the shift, and you've alluded to, to this already pretty well. It's a shift from perhaps thinking of yourself more as an independent contractor, to certainly somebody that is more of the institution, more of a collaborator, but somebody that also maybe thinks of themselves in terms of being a disciplinary expert or being an advocate for their department or their specific area of the institution, and really, needing to shift into a more institutional mindset, and be able to think in terms of what is right, or what benefits the institution as a whole, and not just the place where maybe you've called home, and in the organizational structure or in the discipline. So that's a big identity shift. Some other things that go along with that, just structurally, that shift from kind of an academic year to a full year or fiscal year mental map is not easy as well. The institution is open all year. And it's not just the academic year. And I was one of those faculty members who worked quite a lot in the summer and grumbled about that, and felt like my time wasn't my own. But it is a real shift, to move into a permanent, full-time role, where your time truly is not your own. And you may have, supervisor, boss, also, is difficult to organize your life around your research anymore, in the way that you had some of the flexibility and the independence to do as a faculty member. The other thing I think is important to think about is, some of the things that gave you that expert identity, as somebody holding an advanced degree, especially if you spent, a lot of time in the classroom. You can really be in the habit of taking that teacherly stance or that expert stance on everything. But that teacher posture and that explaining posture is not necessarily appropriate in these new places that you're going to find yourself in a leadership role. So you are going to have to be a perpetual learner, practice curiosity, humility, being reflective, collaborative. All those things will be really, really essential. And that might feel really different, than, a more singular, more independent scholar identity than perhaps you had in the past. But, the good news here is, and you alluded to this too, Andy, is that a lot of things from your disciplinary expertise or just that academic experience that you might have as a faculty member is really a transferable skill or strength for you. So for me, for example, that muscle memory of running complex writing programs, involving, a lot of people, students and faculty, those are transferable skills for me. For a client that I'm working with now, who's a provost, their home discipline was a STEM field where they ran successfully, a grant-funded lab for many years. And so their superpowers are really, come in as being a PI, kind of the finance and team building skills, that they had in those instances. So there are all kinds of crosswalks, that might be available to you, but that will be important, important for you to take advantage of.
I think the that last little nugget right there, as far as is talking about those skills of yours that are kind of your superpowers,
Mhm.
and understanding maybe where other places, kind of the other end of the spectrum, things that maybe you haven't done or you don't quite feel comfortable with, is always, those are always deficiencies that maybe just be mental. They may not actually be something that you have, but you just haven't done it.
Yeah,
Having more of a fundraising background, I always like to remind emerging professionals that while every fundraising job requires fundraising experience, everybody in a fundraising job at some point got a job with no fundraising experience that they
that's
had to
right.
do fundraising for.
That's right.
So we all kind of have those sorts of things. Is there a common thing that you would say from the faculty side that, God, I'm just going to be much more less formal with you, that freak people out? Like, and fundraising, oftentimes we do hear that that's when, like, hey, I know how to write a grant,
Mhm.
but don't make me sit down and ask somebody
Yeah,
for,
don't make me ask somebody for money, right? And
yeah,
you can see like the
yeah,
sweat start to show on their, on their brow. But if you talk to those same people about building relationships with people over time and helping that individual get to know what's really important to that individual so they can see how someone who also wants to have an impact, you can show them how they can have that impact, through their donation to the institution. Like that sounds like, oh, well, yeah, I can do, that
I can
that
do
seems
that.
like a much easier task than, sitting down and, asking people for X dollars. I think that people that come up through academic affairs, come from a classroom experience, similarly, have transferable skills. If you are able to translate, really, complicated material into terms that allow, an undergraduate or a graduate, to be able to gain expertise. Like you have the capacity to develop, other people. Something that can tend to unnerve, faculty in new roles are about, working with money or finance. But it's not like in their home lives that they don't have a budget or, that they don't have, sort of basic skills for, managing funds and responsibilities. So what that looks like, and might be different at the institutional level. But demystifying and making a little less scary things like, managing money, I think help to ease people into new roles.
Thank you. Um, Here for me is kind of like, now you've gone from just an idea and you're pursuing it and you're now in the search. And that the search process, I'd say, is pretty distinctly different for an administrative position versus a faculty position. Instead of a job talk or research agenda, there's a much stronger emphasis on leadership and vision. For faculty members who are considering this, what should they know about the administrative search, and how can they best prepare to present themselves as the best candidates they can be to tell their story?
Yeah. And I think that that last phrase that you use, telling their story, is really the critical thing to keep in mind. In these administrative searches, people want to hear, what can you do here? And they want to hear proof and the receipt, and bring your receipts, right? What is the proof that you see a pathway to doing similar kinds of work in this role that you're applying for, based on what your successes in the past have been. So, a CV that is a list of titles and responsibilities, and a cover letter that rehearses the CV. will not be effective. But being able to, tell stories about how you've managed people and money, and more importantly, you've done so in order to align those resources with an institution's needs. You've created opportunities for students, faculty, staff that have deepened the institution's mission and its strategic direction. And you see a way in which there are similar opportunities, that you can do at this institution. Being able to shape those stories and start those conversations with people is much more effective than saying I had this role and my responsibilities were XYZ. So that suggests too that you are, as you're thinking about, what is my path here, that you're starting to acquire some of the experiences that allow you to tell those stories. So some skills that are always in demand are, being able to work effectively with data, finance, people, technology, complex regulations. If you've got a skill for being able to translate these into language for non-expert audiences in ways that they can understand, effectively, manage projects, making use of those skills. You're really on your way, as far as shaping some of those stories. A coach can be an excellent resource for that, just having a strategic thought partner throughout a search process. But search consultants are also, a really excellent resource. I would encourage people just to keep an eye out for, in searches upcoming that your institution may be running. If there are search consultants that are involved with that search and they're on the ground, doing some of their intelligence gathering for the institution, go to some of those sessions and you will learn a lot there just about how a search is put together, what kind of the backstage looks like. And you can often have opportunities to connect with some of these consultants one-on-one to share some of your impressions and ideas about what your institution needs right now, where the gaps are. But that also gets you on their radar, and you get some relationships that you can start to follow, start to reach out to, for advice about, these are particular kind of opportunities that I'm looking for. And consultants, once you're in a search with them, are very good about offering you advice about shaping your materials, but also giving you some coaching, in instances where you're not advancing, what's going to make you a stronger candidate next time. So don't, want to send some love to the search consultants out there on this, as long as we're having this conversation too.
I think you wrote this wonderful piece for the website in May of 2025 called Exploring a Transition to Academic Leadership. Your horizons may be broader than you think. And in that, you actually said within that search, I thought this was something that surprised me. Don't be afraid to cast it broader than you think you should. Like, don't try to make this so narrow. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? Because that was something that I'm not sure most folks really think about.
Yeah, I think we can, and there's a logic to this, right? The type of institution where we've worked, we tend to look for our next opportunity at a similar type of institution. But there are some opportunities there, to make a different kind of move. It is not impossible to move from one institutional type to another. And I would encourage you to be thinking maybe less about the type of institution, as kind of your screening mechanism, but more about, what is the mission, that really excites you, that really animates you, and where is the mission overlap between, your target institution and where you are or where you have been. And I would encourage you to think back to your own undergraduate and graduate school experiences as well. Any institution where you've spent time as a student or an employee, that gives you a sense of what those cultures and those ecosystems are like. So, if you are interested in, a small liberal arts college, but, only have sort of big university R1, R2 experiences, but maybe you ran your honors college at a Research One institution, or maybe you really had a hand in supporting student research, at an R2. Those are really nice translations, into, a liberal arts driven mission, for one of those small liberal arts institutions. The kinds of hands-on learning, the kinds of, core curricular investments, that those institutions make for students. So, really starting with the idea of mission. What's important to me about this mission? I have a client now that, she made a move from an Ivy to an R2 institution, so a public regional comprehensive that has R2 status now. And the thing that was really important to her was the mission. She loved all the resources and then all the, the really lovely things about being, at an Ivy and having that status. But the mission that really began to motivate her, was extending, that kind of access, that kind of opportunity for really high quality undergraduate research opportunities, extending that to other students for whom, haven't had the same opportunities that, her Ivy League students had had. So that is another way to think about it. What kind of mission, really animates you, and how have you upheld that mission and the kind of work that you're doing at your current institution? And again, coaches and search consultants can be excellent resources here, to help you kind of map, what some of those overlaps might be, and think about, what possibilities, might for you, an institution, that you might not have considered before.
And the right decision for one person is the right decision for one person.
Exactly.
There's no wrong answer here.
Absolutely. I think unless things have changed dramatically since I was a graduate student, I think there is a lot tied up in sending graduate students into roles at, R1 institutions, and that there are all kinds of other institutions that, get overlooked, or kind of looked down upon as somehow, a lesser outcome. But, where most students, go and get their higher education experience in this country are those types of institutions. And, to work with students, for whom, this is a real life-changing opportunity for them, is really, really rewarding. And, to be at an institution, that serves a different population of students. So those are things to think really carefully about as well. Just some of the take with a grain of salt, what a graduate school advisor might suggest is, kind of the best outcome for you on the job market.
Um, Kind of just sticking a little bit with the article, because I think it kind of puts an exclamation point on some of the other things. Would you explain a little bit more about advancing in place? Because I think you refer to it so well and wrap it up so nice in the piece. I think it really kind of explains about seeking those opportunities that you have organically, and testing yourself out.
Exactly. It can be, a great lower stakes testing opportunity for you. And something like I can personally say, was a great opportunity for me. I was at the same institution for 20 years, and I advanced through the faculty ranks and then moved into and up through some administrative roles as well. And that gave me, talk about, some superpowers, a lot of institutional knowledge, that was incredibly valuable. But real opportunities, to build and sustain relationships with people over time that created new opportunities for me within the institution. It can be a big commitment, to move institution, to move to a different area of the country, so that kind of growing in place, advancing where you are, and really making the best use of the opportunities at one institution to gather a number of experiences, that help you develop skills and that are where there, are challenge areas for you, but also, kind of calibrate, what your real strengths and interests are, so you can make an intentional move to another institution when the time is right. So don't overlook the grow in place, and the advantages of that strategy as well.
And those opportunities do come up. It's
They do.
there.
They do.
Um, well, let's try to maybe fast forward just a little bit. We're past the search now, and you've gotten the role, and you think that was the hard part. It's all downhill from here. And sometimes you discover that that's just the beginning of the journey, not the peak of it. What surprised you in good ways, and what took more adjustments once you had that role?
Yeah. Well, so this is the case of, you're the dog who's caught the car, right? So congratulations. Now, now what? Now what do you do? There are always new things to learn and new relationships to build in these roles with people not, just inside of academic affairs, but across the institution. And so over the years and across institutions, that will always be true. And that, that's one of the real joys of working in these roles. And there's nothing like seeing the positive impact you can have on your institution and on the lives of faculty and staff and on the lives of students. And to see that something that you have done, whether it is, kind of a behind the scenes change that you've led or something, that is, that has more of a headline, more of a banner, on it, that faculty and staff and student lives are better because of that, more fulfilling, more rewarding. And there is nothing like, being able to see that. Um, Things that can surprise you and, maybe took a little bit more adjustment than I anticipated. I would just repeat, your time is not your own, in the same way that it is when you're a faculty member. People will treat you differently. Kind of a joke as an AVP or as a provost. It's like, I'm still me. It's me you're talking you're talking to. But people will treat you differently with a title in front of your name. Um, and that takes some getting used to that how people see you is not necessarily how you see yourself or how you want to be seen by them. So I think I think we'll get into this a little bit more and throughout the conversation. But so I'll stop there for now.
Yeah, and I think particularly with that sort of feeling, I think folks, when they finally make it, in until you really get your sea legs about the whatever position it is,
Yeah.
there's definitely imposter feelings that are going on. And when people are treating you differently and you're having some of those imposter feelings, that can be a very difficult one-two combo to try to sift through to make progress on the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
Yes,
It is a yeah.
you are that same person,
Yes.
but
Yes.
there's a different place that you serve the institution, even if it's the same institution, that people interface with you differently because of. So
Indeed, indeed. And I would say the giving yourself some grace and preparing for, particularly moving into a new role, but if that also includes moving institutions, it is going to take, a period of adjustment. And that first year, really can be all about, learning what this new role and what this new place is. If it's a new place, you might be going from some place that you know very, very, very well to some place where like you've got to ask somebody where the bathroom is or where you can where you can park your car. So that's a big adjustment mentally, but also figuring out the resources, the strengths of the team that you're working with, the opportunities, really putting into practice, what you learned about the institution, when you were a candidate, and when you were looking at it on paper or, through the lens of a campus visit, and the reality of getting settled there and getting established, giving yourself the time and the resources to make that adjustment. So again, it's more and more common, for people to, work with a coach, during that transition, or I mean, to be thinking about, explicitly, who can mentor you, who can sponsor you. At your new institution as you come in, so it doesn't feel quite like you're jumping into the deep end of the pool. So those are really good things to think about, as you are preparing for your transition. What is going to help me, both just sort of operationalize what, my everyday looks like. What are the goals of this first year that I'm setting with my supervisor? How am I going to get there? What is it that I need to know about this institution and these people, working for and with me now, in order to achieve those goals. And creating the time that you need to do that, is important. Whereas if you've been at some place for quite a number of years, some of that, might be all just kind of running in the background. I mean, stuff that you just know already, but things that you're going to have to relearn in a new place with new people. So, giving yourself, some grace about some of the adjustment that will require.
And I don't take that for granted. I think that's very, very difficult for a lot of us to be able to do.
It
Uh,
is. It is.
Possibly easier to give to others than to give to yourself in some folks' instance.
Indeed. Indeed. Yes. We can be our own, t much tougher on ourselves than we are on other people for sure.
Well, I'm hoping to stay on schedule, so I'm going to wrap it up with one final question here. Could possibly be the most important for a lot of folks out there. What do you know now that you wish someone had told you at the start of this journey?
Mm. I had some relationships with friends and colleagues that really did change once I crossed a certain line in the org chart. And that was despite doing just some preliminary work, about, just being, friends and colleagues with people for a long time. This is important to me. This is where I think I can have an impact. This is what's calling me right now. And still, it making things strange enough in the relationship that, I mean, the relationship did change, that sense that they weren't, like I was still me, but it felt like to them that, there was a difference there that became harder for them to navigate. So just be prepared, it's possible that, some institutional relationships will be different in people that, you may or may not be able to, be friends with, be friendly with, but not friends with in the same way. And I think the other thing is being cognizant of how some of the strengths that allowed you to move into a role like this, or things that you get rewarded for, as you moved up the ranks. Some of those are really, have a limited, return on investment. So to be the person who outworks everybody else, in first one in, last one out, some of that is like, oh, that gets rewarded in many ways, but it can also lay the conditions for, for kind of longer term burnout. If you don't learn how to, set the boundaries and the habits for yourself that treat rest and renewal as a really essential part of the creative, productive process of leadership.
It, thematically, they might seem different, but really they're pulling at the same thing, which is your evolution and how the world reacts to it, and your ability to control it.
Yeah.
Uh, in
Yeah, I
that
think that's
latter
right.
in that
Hmm.
latter issue, yeah, you can't keep burning the candle on both ends. that way. You have to
Yeah.
figure out a better way to do it.
Right.
And the particularly if you were not required to interact with people as much as you are now in your previous role, that takes a different sort of energy than than other things for a lot of people.
Yes.
But that also is kind of that first one too, how
Hmm.
interpersonally and emotionally those relationships get reset,
Yeah.
not by you, but by others.
Yeah.
And all you have the ability to control is not what they're thinking, but how you're thinking and acting. Um, I think in that former one, I'm interested. Let's say I'm your client here and I come to you and I say, my best friend Bob, when we were back in the department together, we were thick as thieves. We had all the same interests. We believed the same things. It was great. And now that I've been promoted, Bob doesn't seem to want to talk about anything with me as it relates to work. And when we start talking about the fun stuff we used to talk about, it's really hard for us to connect and not have anything but kind of a pro forma conversation.
Yeah.
What should I do with Bob? Should I address it? Should I give it time? Does time fix these things a little bit? What should I do?
I think it depends on, on the relationship as to whether or not, time, what happens over time. But, I guess, if I were wearing a coaching hat, I would be asking questions of you like, well, what did you expect? And what is not meeting your expectations of how this relationship has changed? And what do you want here? I mean, what is the desire that you have for this relationship, and why is that, and what might be the obstacles to that now, and how many of them, is it possible to to address with Bob. So coaches will ask a lot of what questions that help you clarify your situation, your options, and help you make some decisions about, where is your agency? What can you control in this situation, and and therefore, what options do you want to pursue here? Yeah.
Thank you. I'll let you know how it goes with Bob. So I think we're at a place where I can ask Kelly to come and you ready for some audience questions, Eileen?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Hello, Kelly.
Hello. Hi, Eileen. Hi, Andy. I've
Hi,
enjoyed the
Kelly.
conversation so far. And yeah, we have some audience questions. So I will start with the first one. And I know you talked about some leadership skills already, but I'm going to dig a little bit deeper here. So the question is, what are some ways to become an inspirational leader versus a task assigning, box checking manager? What are your thoughts on that, Eileen?
Well, I know Andy's going to have some things to say about leadership versus management here too. But I think the kind of a cheat sheet for people that are in managerial positions that want to do those in a way that have those characteristics of leadership. I think is being really attentive to what do their people need, and for people to feel satisfied in their roles. They need enough resources to do their job. So what are you able to do to help support that, or advocate, for the resources they need? They need some agency in how they do their job. So the what, ideally there's some flexibility around that as well, but even more flexibility around the how. How can you give that to them? Are you able to give them recognition, for the work that they're doing, and demonstrate like real care, for their well-being in order to do it? So there are reasonable boundaries around working time. Um, do they believe that, things are fair on this team? Do they have productive, healthy ways to share concerns, to work through conflict with you, or with each other? And can you create the conditions for that? And do they see, this might be one of the more important ones, how, what the work you're doing on your team, how is that connected to the mission of the organization? Sometimes it can be a long walk from, what the mission statement of the organization as a whole is to what's happening in this, in this particular office or unit or department. So to really clarify that and to talk about that explicitly can give some meaning and purpose, to the work that's happening there. And, are there opportunities for advancement? If you're feeling like you've got to hold on to people and can't let them go, people feel that, versus working with a leader who is invested in helping them advance, if that's what their ambition is, who's curious about, what their own ambitions and goals are, and want to make that, a regular part of one-on-ones or other, other conversations about, what the work of the unit is. So I think those are things that are, it's kind of a good starter kit for, for managers there who want to exhibit leadership tendencies. But Andy, you want to get an oar in the water here? I think you've got some
Yeah, I
leadership
mean,
versus management things to
I think
say.
what's I think the other part that strikes me, Eileen, from the conversation today is it, particularly in these more advanced leadership roles, when you move into management, it's a different sort of management than it is where you previously have been.
Hmm.
And I think the question is I hear it a little bit is, hey, some of those tendencies of being very hands-on and in the weeds,
Yes,
you don't have the bandwidth or the ability
that's right.
to at these next stages to do that quite the way
That's right.
that's there. If somebody is that you're managing isn't able to manage people to do those things, there's a bigger problem that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
Um, I think management and leadership positions are often kind of thrown around as rewards for high performers. I think management is something that you want to do, you need to take seriously. It serves a very, very important role and has very important responsibilities.
Yeah.
And you have to do certain things to be a manager. Leadership, I think, is a little bit more difficult. Leadership is kind of, particularly within academia, is what's that curiosity we talked about earlier. All of these different people going in all these different directions, and they're amazing things that they do. They're serving what they're supposed to do, but now as an institution, we all need to go in one direction, and we have to figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, simply put, are the vending machines going to serve Coke or are they going to serve Pepsi? We can't have, if you're at a large institution, there's a contract with one of the two of them. It's
Hmm.
not both.
Yeah.
And if if you're a leader, how you go about making what what seems like a trivial decision, but can actually be a big decision that we're going to need to go with Coke or we're going to need to go with Pepsi because of these reasons and make a decision.
Yeah.
How you go about it is the leadership.
Yes. The
The
how
man
piece. Yeah.
the management
Hmm.
part of it
Hmm.
is different. People can
Hmm.
manage around implementing Coke or implementing Pepsi.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
being skilled with, the resources of your institution, managing those skillfully, and that's, human talent, that's financial resources. And leadership is, the vision, for the institution and some of those trade-offs that come along with that. So we talked earlier about, are you a systems thinker, but, that you enjoy working with design constraints? Those are design constraints. It is not possible for everybody to have everything that they want, so what serves, the greater good in terms of, this institution's mission, and how to, make those decisions and work with people to make the best decision possible in constrained circumstances and feel like that's something people can get on board with. To your point earlier, it is rarely just, making the decision and then communicating that to people.
We have time for one more question.
Sure, let's go.
Oh, okay. So actually, we received a couple questions regarding paths to leadership. One was, what is leadership, the path to leadership in academic affairs to serve as a provost? But then we actually just got a question in the chat regarding a path, like is it better to take a lateral move or a pay cut to get your foot in the door? So I'm kind of
Mhm.
combining those questions into one. I know there's not a one size fits all approach to the best path, but do you have any insights into that?
Yeah, I will. Well, to answer the first one, if you're interested in, a chief academic officer role, and that's, the provost is the chief academic officer, having your academic bona fides, so to speak, remain important. And that usually means earning tenure, the rank of full professor, demonstrating real strength as a teacher, as a researcher, really able to earn tenure, be awarded tenure at the institution where you're going to serve as the chief academic officer, and having a record of increasing leadership success as a chair, director, associate dean, dean. Some or all of those steps, remain pretty traditional for the chief academic officer's role, as much as the presidency and some other roles, they've become much more diverse paths, to the presidency. So not to rule that out if you don't have not done all those things, but those are things to keep in mind. The question about the lateral move is a really interesting one, and there can be ways to think about, what is important to you to gain from the role, and is it truly a path to elsewhere, or is there kind of is it a dead end or a glass ceiling? But a dear colleague of mine was an AVP, at a public regional comprehensive university, and for a number of decisions that were, family related, needed to make a geographical location, but took a role at a community college after that. This was in enrollment management. But was able then to move into a vice presidency there, and then from there move back into a four-year public institution cabinet level position. So for them to gain some of that experience at a different type of institution, at a higher rank, to work to acquire some skills that broaden their ability to move out of enrollment management and into other types of roles. That was really important. And some of it's also about, the ability to work with people in particular. If you're really excited about the opportunity, to work with a particular person in a particular team that you think that you can learn from, or there is long-term advancement possibility there. It is something to keep in mind, not to rule out categorically. But it is the type of decision where, talking with somebody, a mentor, a sponsor, a coach, even a search consultant, potentially, who's either made that kind of move in the past or can really help be a strategic thought partner there. So you're focused on what's really going to benefit you in the long term from such a move, would be a good idea.
Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Well, unfortunately, our time has come to a close. I'm just going to do a few quick wrap-ups. If you have any questions for us, will you please email them to us at podcast@higheredjobs.com, or feel free to drop us a direct message on X at Higher Ed Careers. We really appreciate your questions and your feedback. It helps us make this content better for you and the experience better for you. Eileen has been gracious enough to put her LinkedIn profile into the group chat. So if you want to connect with Eileen, I'd absolutely encourage you to do so. And in addition, I believe somebody from the Higher Ed Jobs team included a link to that article that she wrote back in May of 2025, which I'd also highly recommend you take a look at. It's a really nice piece that I think has a lot of practical advice, some of which we covered today, others of which I think is a little bit different. But most importantly, thank you, Eileen. It's been wonderful having you here with us again, and
Yes,
hope
this has
you'll
been
come back for a third time.
Absolutely. Even if there's no long-term reward for a fifth or more than fifth appearance, I'd be happy to come back. This was loads of fun. It's really good to spend time with everybody today. So appreciate the invitation and just had a great time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen.
Take care, everybody. We look forward to talking again with you real soon.
Take care.